All right, here we are. It's Wednesday. I was just watching the baseball game. Padres won. Great. Okay, so here we are. Chapter 4, The Magic Mountain. Where is that? Oh, that's me. But there's Thomas Mann, Thomas Mann, the John E. Wood translation. I'll read a little bit of it, but it's been a while. But finally got to the second part here, or chapter 4. Um, the first 3 chapters take place only maybe one day, but this chapter is maybe Hans Castorp is supposed to stay in Magic Mountain for 3 weeks, but by the end of the 3 weeks, he starts to get a temperature. He goes to see the main doctor, Dr. Barons, and he tells him he should be in bed for a couple more weeks. So, but we get the start of like some of the conversations, about politics from Separatini and different people, and he's kind of like looking at Claudia Cat Chow and all that. So, well, let's read. Let's get right into it. Read the beginning of chapter 4 here. Where is it? And it starts to snow when he gets there. It's like August, but it's snowing. And I lived in the East Coast for a while, so I remember, I remember like some harsh winters, but I remember it being winter. I remember it snowing on May 1st, like the first year. That was also the um, the winter storm of '96, and May '96. It also snowed on May 1st, and then 2 weeks later, it was like hotter than hell. Like the how humidity, the summer came. There was like no spring that year. Just winter went on for like 6 months. Well, I wasn't there for the first part of the winter, but I've been told, and then we get into summer, and then I've been there also where it was really hot in November, and then by November 8th, it's like the temperature drops like 30 degrees. So that kind of reminded me of those times in New York. So what do we got? Okay, a necessary purchase, chapter 4. Is your summer over now? Was the ironic question Hans Gustav posed to his cousin on the third day. So he's only on the third day. So yeah, the first 3 chapters are 2 days, and then we're on the third day here. And I guess there's a theme of when you're younger, time moves real slow. Like years seem like decades, and then when you're older, just there's a different uh, time like speeds up and stuff. I think they kind of talk about that in this a little bit. So and it's like the book, and the weather had taken a terrible turn for the worse. His second day as a visiting guest up here had been a glorious summer day. The sky shone deep blue above the spear-shaped top of the pines. The town glistened brightly in the heat of the valley floor, and the cheerful, serene sound of bells filled the air as cows wandered the slopes and grazed on short, sun-warmed alpine grass. Even at early breakfast, the ladies had been wearing sheer washable blouses, some with open work sleeves, which did not suit them all equally well. It looked particularly bad, for example, on Frost Star, whose arms were too spongy. Diaphanous clothes were simply not for her, and each of his own ways, the gentlemen of the sanatorium had likewise made allowances for fine weather. Some appeared in jackets of luster wool, some in linen suits, and Joachim Zimson had worn ivory flannels and blue sports jacket, a combination that lent him perfectly him the perfect military look. As for Sepertini, he in fact repeatedly remarked on his intention to change his suit. Damn, he said as he joined his cousins for a stroll down into town after lunch. That sun is hot. It appears I have to don lighter apparel, but although he expressed himself elegantly, he went right on wearing his checked trousers and long Petersham coat with the wide lapels. Presumably, that was the full extent of his wardrobe. On the third day, however, it was as if nature had taken a tumble. Everything was turned upside down. Hans Castorp did not believe his own eyes. It was just after dinner that they had all been lying in the rescuer for 20 minutes or so when the sun abruptly hit itself. Ugly peat brown clouds moved in from the ridges of the southeast, and a wind bearing cold, alien air that went to your bones and seemed to have come from unknown regions of ice and suddenly swept down through the valley, setting the temperature, plunging and inaugurating a whole new regimen. Snow, Jocum's voice said from behind the glass partition. What, do you mean snow? What do you mean snow? Hans Castorp asked in response. You're not telling me that it's going to snow now. I certainly am, Joachim replied. We know that wind, once it starts to be sleigh rides. Nonsense, Hans Castorp. I'm not mistaken. This is still the beginning of August. But as a man well versed in local conditions, Joachim turned out to be right, for within a few minutes, a repeated collapse of thunder, a powerful snowstorm set in with flurries so heavy that everything seemed to veiled in a white mist, and both the town and valley were lost to sight. Yeah, the last 5 years, like the whole COVID thing, I haven't really been. I just had one. Um, whatever they call it, sickness, bad food, eat something bad, and food poisoning, as it's called. And but about a year ago, there was a day where there was a storm, this kind of like a weird summer storm in the middle, a lot like this. And I went out there. I was like filming it. There's a videotape of me walking around in the rain, and I got sick because of that. Sometimes I get like hay fever because there's sometimes it never rains, and then it just starts raining, and it's all this pollen in the air. So we're talking about Thomas Mann, the Magic Mountain. It tells a story of Hans Castorp, a young German engineer who goes to visit his cousin in a tuberculosis sanatorium in the mountains of Davos, Switzerland. The novel explores global technology and ideological shifts leading up to World War One through its main protagonist. So let's have a summary of chapter 4. What the hell goes on in this chapter? It's about 100 pages. The first 3 chapters were each about. I guess the first 2 chapters were 25 pages maybe, and then the third chapter was about 50 pages. This is about a little over 100 pages, and then the next 3 chapters are around 200-ish, maybe more, some of them. So it's kind of elongated. It just gets longer. Time kind of slows down, and 3 weeks have passed by the end of this chapter. Okay, so at the beginning, Sepertini reproaches Hans Castorp for accepting the old-fashioned view that disease is always something noble, even when it affects stupid people. But Castorp claims that whenever disease or death is present in any form, he develops his faculties to the utmost. Even coffins and funerals have a particular appeal to him. Cultural backsliding is the term that Sepertini uses to describe Castorp's notion. Sepertini respects the body only as long as it presents no obstacle against the attainment of freedom. As a consequence, he regards the sick body with contempt. Important to note is the surprise that Sepertini expresses upon hearing that Hans Castorp has brought a blanket. The blanket is a symbol of the rest cure at the sanatorium, and the rest cure the symbol of temptation towards the dangerous spells of timelessness. The blanket, yeah, the blanket means something. The Italian chooses his words. Placet experiri, Latin for he likes to experiment, to express his surprise over Castorp's decision to resign himself to life at the Bergdorf. The point is obvious. Separtini's keen mind sees the temptations of illness, whereas our hero, pursuing a system of trial and error, is still largely unaware of them. He is a seeker, the hero, forever venturing on new paths and vacillating back and forth between what he is and what he's led to believe he should be. With the rest cure comes plenty of leisure time. With the leisure time comes all those countless dreams, visions, and states of semi consciousness, which lends a mystical quality to the basically high intellectual story. No wonder Castorp lapses into another reflection on the nature of time. When Separtini joins the cousins on the occasion of a Sunday morning terrace concert, they all become involved in a lengthy discussion on music. Joachim stresses its relationship to time, and Italian adds a new dimension to the conversation by tying music up with politics, confessing his preference for intellectual pursuits, especially literature over music. Separtini even declares music to be politically suspect because it invites the mind to remain passive or to lose itself in reverie. Joachim Joaquin's reply affords us a rare glimpse into his uncomplicated mind. He defends what he calls the moral value of music by arguing that it has a way of dividing time into measures and other units. This alone makes it possible for him to enjoy time, which would otherwise remain one dull continuum. Sepertini agrees with him insofar as music may defeat boredom. Joachim is, of course, simpler than Sepertini, and this is why he longs for the conveniently arranged daily routine of the world below. So they up there they have like a music program and they have lectures and to keep them going. Sepertini then brings up the essentially emotional qualities of music. His views reflect man's lifelong notion of the self-destructive element in the aesthetic soul. The soul has a tendency to affirm life only to the degree it can provide the individual with purely subjective aesthetic experience. Opposed to any moral view of life, Sepertini is, of course, a moralist. The aesthetic soul conceives of the total immersion of the individual in contemplation as life soul justification. It denies an individual responsibility to society and therefore tends to be politically reactionary. That it can, under certain circumstances, be dangerous for segments of a whole nation to be transported into a musical emotional passion was proven. For instance, in Nazi Germany, the Nazis enthusiastically extolled the operas of Wagner, and with his ancient Germanic sagas and highly emotional music, the enormous appeal of this combination unfortunately distorted Wagner's intention. We have seen Sepertini's enthusiasm for literature, preferably that of classical and Renaissance poets, and hence Castorp reluctance to share in his enthusiasm. But towards the end of his stay in the mountains, Hans will sing and listen to music, highly romantic music. This corresponds to man's belief that the preference of music over literature is a German characteristic, while Western civilization is essentially founded on literary intellectual values. Even if he is grossly oversimplifying, Italians, after all, have created opera. Though one can argue opera is not a purely musical genre. Man has a point. The musical tradition in Central and Eastern Europe is a long one, and there simply is nobody of the stature of a Bach, Beethoven, Mozart outside the German world. By the same token, it is easy to show that German literature never produced a Dante or Shakespeare, and cannot compare either in terms of tradition or quality with that of the French, barring perhaps Goethe. The real problems, however, come in when man, or Separatini, man's rational aspect, tries to explain these differences by assigning a basically emotional quality to music and an intellectual one to literature. Where does this leave Milton, much of the 17th century, most of the 19th century, writers like D.H. Lawrence, to name a few? And where shall we put Bach's fugue, Mozart, and highly mathematical music based on Schoenberg's 12-tone scale? Mann was treading on thin ice here, and he must have known it more than once did he stress the complex musical structure of the Magic Mountain, and its hero of his last novel, Dr. Faustus, is the composer. And his hero of the last novel, Dr. Faustus, is composer Adrian Leverkusen, an intellectual par excellence. One could more easily dismiss this interesting but deficient attempts at classifying people and people by national traits if man had not attached implicit values to them. And this he clearly did. Heinz Castorp rejects many of Satriani's ideas in an effort to find his own way to a humane life, but he is more inclined to side with the Italians' views than those of Claudia Schaukat or later on NAFTA. The autobiographical element and political import are significant. Man was farsighted enough to question the merit of Western democracy when transplanted to Germany, yet there can be no doubt that the older he became, the more he agreed with his ideals. He despised tyranny, whether in Germany or the former Soviet Union. Okay, so let's see where we are. Okay, so 60 minutes. This might be a long thing. Is any questions? Anybody there? Okay, so I don't know. Okay, so it doesn't look like. Seem like I'm kind of. It's Wednesday night, man. Everybody's. It's very quiet. It's starting to get cold again. Okay, like the novel. So, though these political implications of men's belief in the national ethnic characterization are not the essence of the dream Castorp has on a bench not far from the Burgo, they dra- dramat- dramatize it considerably. In this dream, our hero finds himself back in high school where his thoughts center around uh, Pristislav Hippa. Yeah, there's a chapter about this guy Hippa. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. There's a funny pronunciation, but it was Prib Priv Hippa. But I think it has like weird. Castorp used to be fascinated by his appearance, though they only met once where he borrowed a pencil from Hippa. The parallel to Claudia Chocat is obvious. Snapping out of his dream, Castorp realized that the long span of time of his mind has traveled and still fighting spells of dizziness runs to attend a lecture by another Slav, Dr. Kukowski. Our hero's stubborn nosebleed is a symptom of his deteriorating condition, as is his spinning head, yet Hans deliberately rushes to suck in the poisonous analysis of love presented by the Polish doctor. Each in a different way and each to a different degree, these three Eastern people play a vital role in Castorp's worsening condition. As indicated above, Hans' dream is remarkable for another reason, namely the complex world of dreams with its total suspension of the sequence of time. In the previous dream, Hans Castorp found himself borrowing a pencil. He will do so in reality in the carnival scene. Now that Hippa has been recalled, Hans is aware of the connection between the school friend and Claudia Katchat. And no other leitmotif does the inseparability of man's consciousness and unconscious levels of experience appear so strikingly. Man employs the leitmotif to enhance the vividness of his characterizations, and also to emphasize the similarities of recurring situations. Things recur over and over again. You know, like things, stories, kind of like I was talking about the snow appearing in the Magic Mountain and the winter coming in. I think of all my experiences in New York and my story and May 1st. So you remember exactly May 1st and like snowing, like just when you thought like spring is coming in, spring, and we were like spring's one of the best times in New York, or fall is probably the best, and then spring's second. Winter and summer like are the worst on the East Coast, probably even worse than Boston. Does this blend of dreams and consciousness experience mean that had it not been for his fascination with HIPAA long ago, he would have felt attracted to Claudia Kotchak? I think that's true. That's like Lolita, because Lolita has a pre Lolita. So I think things don't actually happen sometimes. Sometimes it's a recurrence. Sometimes things happen 3, 4, 5 times. Expressed in the terms of psychoanalysis, has his repressed homoerotic attraction to HIPAA emerged as his desire for Claudia? The answer remains ambiguous. At any rate, Hans Castorp attentively listens to Dr. Krokowski's analysis in an effort to get rid of his mounting sense of confusion. The subject of his lecture is the inevitability of conflicts between love and chastity. He contends, although in the minds of most people, the ideal of chastity defeats the sex drive. This drive is too strong to let itself be repressed. Repressed physical love is the basis of disease. Krokowski arguments and his ruthlessly scientific ways make him the irresponsible representative of the type of psychoanalysis who naively believes in the possibility of solving people's innermost problems through rational investigation. He speaks of the redeeming power of the analytic, and he looks like Christ with his arms outstretched and his head on one side. Nevertheless, his ambiguous treatment of love and its mounting interest in magic make him the apostle, not of love, but of sterility. Appropriately enough, his office is located in the basement and is shadowed by profound twilight. In this atmosphere of pseudo scientific sensuality, Claudia Couch's presence triggers another dream within Castorp, one full of longing for her. Indeed, Hans' love for her is disease forming, but his dreams are but symbols of his physical and moral condition. So there you have it. Do we have? Oh, we don't have very much more. But I was gonna say, yeah, Castorp. He does become sick, and he starts to like it there. Whenever his mind is not clouded by Claudia's cloud chat's image, Castorp tends to doubt Hofrat Baron's ability and his interest in the cure of his patients. Baron was seriously ill himself, therefore, can a former patient, one who has not perhaps wholly recovered, really do anything for him and for anybody up here? Castorp is aware his own health is dwindling, but he is already too sick, both physically and morally, to do anything about it. More and more, Madame Couchat becomes the center of his life. When she is around, they find ever new ways of flirting and arousing each other's sensuality. And when she is away on occasional visits with her husband, he daydreams about her. Hence, Kestorp is quickly becoming part and parcel of the horrible ennui of this sanatorium existence. So, yeah, kind of Kachat. She's been at the sanatorium. I'm not really sure what's. She probably has tuberculosis or some kind of cough or something. But she has a husband. She's been to a few sanatoriums, not only the one in Davos, but she goes back and forth between. She's like torturing people at several ones. He probably has a lot of people there. At the same time, his ties to Joachim are growing weaker. This slight trembling of his head at the very sight of Madame Capchat's is another outward sign of his violent emotional involvement. One of the numerous leitmotifs in the novel, Castorp's trembling also serves to point to the significance of inherited tradition. Hans' father and grandfather suffered from the inflammation of the lungs, thus being by nature's life delicate child. Hence, disease affords him an ever more lucid understanding of himself. It teaches him that the body and the soul can not be two separate realms, each following its own laws. This is important to remember, for the ultimate transcendence of this dualism is the professed goal of our hero's painful journey towards self-awareness and humanism. The idea that man is to an astonishing degree molded by tradition is one of man's favorite themes. And it is dealt with once more in this chapter. Separatini tells Castorp about his own grandfather who devoted his life to the noble cause of the Italian Revolution. Hans replies by mentioning that his own grandfather was dedicated to the cause of the traditionalists of that time, who ruled over very areas where Separatini's ancestors lived. Together, they discovered the uniqueness of their grandfathers who practically fought each other, each convinced of the justice of his cause. So yeah, like Italians in the in the 19th century must have been kind of weird, because I'm guessing they were pretty cosmopolitan and like I mean, they seem to be real intellectual, like kind of like Borges or Italo Calvino, or who wrote the name Umberto Eco. I mean, they tend to be sort of really cosmopolitan type of people. So I think there may be more so back then. The trance that Hans Castorp experienced while listening to the story of opposing causes has political reference. Has political relevance. He remembers himself on a lake in his native Germany, crossing over in a boat, the pale moon rising in the east and glowing in the setting sun in the west, leaving him in a strange mood of twilight. The colorful and confusing twilight stands for the impending political holocaust threatening Germany. As we had said previously, this picture may also be interpreted to illustrate man's favorite political idea, that of Germany as a saving, mediating force between East and West. In any case, once again, a dream points into the future by means of an image of the past. Separatini continues to present himself in the light of a rationalist who believes in the final victory of democracy. He agrees with his grandfather's comparison of the French Revolution days with the 6 days of creation. He explains that he became a man of letters because there is a close relationship between humanistic thought and action on the one hand, and speech and writing on the others. The idea of intellectual superiority of literature's advancing, and yet Hans Castorp is not impressed, and he even pounds his fist on the table at so much arrogance from the Italian. After all, Separatini, as much as anyone else, is what he is largely because of his ancestors. This is Thomas Mann speaking, the apostle of tradition at its best. So I mean, those are more about some of the ideas, but I mean, like in this chapter, 3 weeks pass, and how are we doing? Okay, so we're almost 30 minutes. It's a little long. 3 weeks pass, and he's Hans is also thinking about leaving. He's going, okay, well, my 3 weeks are almost up, and then he starts to get a little sick, and there was a few other things that happened, and he's talking to the nurses, and he's talking to the doctors, and they convince him to stay longer. So that's what he gets to. So this chapter takes about 3 weeks long. They recommend that he go to bed and stay in bed for a while and see what happens, and get the temperature down. In the beginning he's always taking his temperature. Then he in the middle of this chapter he kind of forgets his thermometer, and all of a sudden he takes his thing and he's like, oh shit, it's like 99.7, and so he's feeling sick, and there we have it. As he's talking to the people. So I'm guessing he's getting more trapped into the lives up there. Okay, so we're going up to 30 minutes. Okay, so we got to end it here. Uh, so I'm up to page 217. So I'll probably be. Oh, so there's somebody there. I'll probably be back. Today's Wednesday, so it's like 200 pages. So I'm aiming. Today's the second, so maybe around October 11th, I'll finish the next chapter. So you got to read 200 pages to stay up with me, or to keep up with me. You got to read 200 pages like in the next 10 days or so. Okay, well, thank you, and just remember to read my new book, The Analog Body. Not not much to do with Thomas Mann, but maybe some of the newer stuff. Well, maybe some of my other books I publish will have more to do with Magic Mountain, Thomas Mann. Okay, thanks for listening, and that's it.